Welcome to The Lazy Girl Library, the podcast where reading is a pleasure and captivating adventures happen from the comfort of your couch. I'm your host, Darbi.
And I'm Mikayla.
And if you've ever spent more time rearranging your bookshelf than your priorities, then you, my friend, are in the right place. All right. Hello, Mikayla.
Hello, Darbi.
Hello, listeners.
We're here. We did it.
I can't believe it's already been a night for us. We have, as the name states, we are Lazy Girl Library, but, we've had to not be lazy tonight, and we've had a lot of technical difficulties, but we're here.
A lot of workarounds, but we made it. Shout out Josh. Thanks for the help.
Yay. But anyway, we're so excited to have you here. This is our very first episode. So kind of for this episode, we really just want to talk about the who, what, and whys of this podcast and, take the opportunity to introduce ourselves to all of you fellow book enthusiasts. So I guess kind of just hopping in with who we are and introductions. I'm Darbi.
Hi, Darbi.
Hey. Sorry, this is weird. I'm still trying to get used to talking. So a little bit about me. Basically, the type of reader that I have labeled as the present escapist.
Which I love.
What does that mean? It means that I like to escape reality in books, and I'm very present when I read. I am not thinking too deeply into it. I am living in the book moment. I am never guessing the ending or guessing anything, actually. I'm just there. I'm escaping life. But then as soon as the book closes, do not ask me what happened because I don't know. I was in the moment. What type of reader are you, Mikayla?
I am definitely the complete opposite. I consider myself the conspiracy theorist. So unlike Darbi, who loves to be present in her books, I am constantly thinking ahead and coming up with the wildest theories of what could happen, what is going to happen. I bet this person's going to fall in love with this person, or this person's the bad guy, whatever. So I'm always trying to figure out the ending before the ending can come. Like a little game for me.
The worst, a lot of times I'll have read a book before Mikayla, and so she sends me all of her thoughts, and the worst is when I have to try and gaslight her because she's correct about everything, and I'm like, maybe.
The best feeling is some of those where I'm like, okay, this one's really outlandish, I really don't think this is gonna happen, but I'm gonna write it down anyway, and then it ends up happening. Such a validating feeling.
It does. It's good. Well, actually, I don't know the feeling, but I assume that would be cool. All right, our favorite genres. My favorite genres are fantasy. That's probably my top one. But then I also like romance, and I really like self-help books too, especially faith-based ones.
You find really good ones.
Thanks.
I always love the recommendations.
Thanks.
My favorite genres, I also do fantasy. It's how Darbi and I really got into this with the Sarah J. Maas books. I also love a good mystery or historical fiction. But really, I'm just kind of an eclectic reader. If there's a good story to it, then I enjoy it. So.
Yeah. What are your top 3 favorite books, Mikayla?
That's a great question. Anything Sarah J. Maas, as we both well know.
As you readers will know.
Yes. We talk about her all the time. We bond over the trauma of the Maasverse. Specifically, I loved A Court of Silver Flames. I'm a Nesta girly through and through. Or the Throne of Glass series, just all of them. Can't pick one. They all are at the top there. Outside of fantasy, I loved 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton. I hope I pronounced that last name right. It is not related to the 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, as many people like to think when they hear the name. Completely different author, premise, and everything. It's definitely more of a mystery, but it's one that kept my head spinning the whole time. As a conspiracy theorist, it's hard to find those, so that's top of my list there. Yeah. And the third one, I'd say The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. It's very different than most books that I like to read, but it was just beautifully written. The prose in it, the visuals that you have. I'm also such a sucker for Greek mythology, so I loved those tie-ins there. Definitely top 3.
That's good. I actually haven't read 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle or The Song of Achilles. but maybe I'll give those a try. You have read all of my favorite books. My top 3 favorite books. I also echo anything by Sarah J. Maas, and Throne of Glass, I think, is my favorite series by her. There was just so many good characters, and, like, there was not a single one of those characters that I didn't like. Like, I really just, I felt a connection to all of them. I think this is an underrated fantasy book, and it's one of my top 3 favorite books, is The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. I read this book on, well, not fully on a plane, but the ending I read on a plane, and oh my gosh, the people next to me must have thought I was crazy. I was crying, I was gasping. It made me feel all the emotions. It was so good. It was so good. I wish I could reread that one for the first time. And then I think my 3rd favorite book is I Don't Wait Anymore by Grace Thornton. I hope I said that right. It's been a while since I read this book, but this one really helped me at a time in my life where I was just a little lost in my faith and just wasn't sure what my purpose was. And it just, I don't know, it really helped me. And I liked her stories. I liked how she related things back to God. And it just, all I can say is that, like, it enlightened me. I was reading it, and I remember specifically I was on a cruise, and there was this one chapter and this one page talking about a verse, and I was just like, whoa. And for the rest of the trip, the rest of the day, I was just engulfed, and my mind was, like, opened up. It was like a new part of my brain, like, started working.
Yeah, it is. You recommended it to me, and I read it, and I keep it by my bedside. I have little notes highlighted and everything. They go back and reference because I thoroughly enjoyed it too. Yeah. So I can't echo your thoughts enough on that.
Yeah,
10 out of 10.
It's a sweet one. I like it. Okay. Well, why are we here? Like, why are we doing this podcast?
Oh, another great question, Darby. So really, we started, well, this is honestly truly all because of Darby. Darby started this, all credit goes to her, because she started the book club that I joined, which is what got me back into reading, but we can go into that later. And so, shout out Book Babes, by the way, too. That's our book club. So we've been reading together for a while. You got me into Sarah J. Maas, and so we're always texting back and forth about those books. And as I've been going on the journey, after you're holding my hand through it, which I can't appreciate enough.
It is funny. The day that you read a Sarah J. Maas book before me is going to be weird.
It's weird. I don't think it'll ever come. We've gotten too set in our ways at this point. Mm-hmm. But we talk about books all the time because of that, and because we have very similar likes and dislikes with books. And so my fiance Josh was always telling us that we needed to start a book podcast to just sit down and start recording all these conversations that we'd have. We're like, yeah, sure, whatever. Eventually, maybe. Mm-hmm. And then finally we were hanging out, and Darby's like, you know what? We really should start a podcast. Like, for real, let's do this.
We talk for hours about books, and I feel like the book community is so close, but at the same time, I feel like it can be kind of spaced out because you don't know, like, who's reading what. You don't want to spoil something. You don't know if someone likes something that you like, or you just don't know if someone's, like, a reader. Like, I feel like sometimes reading can be intimate, so I feel like this is a good place for us to, like, share and meet more book friends, like ourselves.
Create our own little community of people to talk to about all things book-related.
Yeah.
Which is what you can expect from this podcast.
Exactly. We will be rotting on the couch and talking about books.
Nothing new there. Yeah. We're just recording it now. So things you can expect from us here. We're just going to be talking about all things bookish, really. Sharing our favorite reads, exploring different genres. That is one thing that we love to do in our book club, is we always pick, like, a different book in a different genre, trying to expand our horizons. So you'll get a wide range of books from us on this journey of a podcast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then also, still related to books, but not just reading, we're going to talk about popular bookish topics, things that circulate on Book Talk or Bookstagram, what's trending, what are funny memes that we saw, just all things books and bookish.
It'll be kind of fun, too, because we do have such different reading styles. You'll get, like, the two different or two different versions of the books that we're reading, or two different point of views for some of these topics too. And we'd be curious to hear where you all land on that spectrum, whether you're more like me, more like Darby, or somewhere in the middle.
It's going to be interesting. I'm really going to have to focus on like taking notes as I read, because like I said, I read something and then once the book's over, like, it's over. Like, trying to pull the thoughts out sometimes. Luckily, Mikayla has so many notes that it, like, jogs my memory. I'm like, oh, yeah, I did like that. Or, no, I didn't like that. But I think it'll be good. And so each month we'll be talking about a different book. And right now, our aim is to do 2 podcasts a month, one specifically like on a book that we're reading, and then the other one will be more bookish topics. But we are Lazy Girl Library, so don't take that to heart. Take it with a grain of salt.
We'll get to it when we get to it. And the learning curves.
But that's what we're going to try and do. So welcome to our book club, because that's kind of what this is. Each month we're going to be doing a new book, and hopefully you guys can read with us.
We'll let you know what the books are too, so yeah, you can follow along. This month, I think we're doing The Worst Best Man by Lucy Score. So that'll be the next podcast episode. You'll get to hear our thoughts on the book that we're still currently reading, or at least I am.
I did, yeah.
That is the other thing. I feel like Darby is a really fast reader.
But I'm not.
And I'm a very slow reader.
Okay, but it's like I'm not a fast reader. I just put off every single other priority and spend the hours reading. But it's not happening fast. It's definitely, like, I'm not a fast reader. I just put off all other priorities sometimes.
I feel that. I'm such a specific type of reader, too. Like, I'm not somebody that can tune out the world and read anywhere. I feel like I'm, like, one of those plants that needs, like, the specific type of environment and soil in order to thrive. That's me reading. I need a certain environment.
You're like
mindset.
A succulent plant.
Exactly.
Not too much sun, not too much water.
Yep. I need it just the right conditions in order to get into a book, which can be difficult sometimes. But we're working through it, and I will be finishing the book here soon.
Yeah, we'll get it in by the next podcast. But this is really fun already. I'm having fun already. But also in this episode, since it's new and we're talking about who we are, we kind of wanted to talk a little bit about kind of how we got into books. Because for some people, they don't start really reading or getting into fiction until, like, college, while some people start, like, as they're a kid, they just read all growing up. So we kind of wanted to talk about our history in reading and how we grew up. So for me, I really have always loved reading. My mom likes to tell this story. I did a pageant when I was, like, a baby, like I was a toddler in tiara, but only one pageant. But she always tells this story that when the judges asked what my favorite toy was, I said a book.
Aww.
A book was my favorite toy.
That's so cute.
And then I vividly remember being a kid in elementary school, and I loved performing. I thought I was going to be an actress one day. And so I remember reading certain books, and I would, like, sing the pages out loud, or, like, read them as if it was a performance, and I was, like, the actress. And so I definitely read in elementary school, and that was more of, like, performing to me. Was like the little books. I know that's weird.
No, that's so awesome though.
But and then in middle school, I had the sweetest librarian, and she just, like, got me, and she knew what books to, like, point me in the direction to read, because I don't know, I didn't know what to read, and she just gave me some really good ones. So she kind of kept me going. And then in high school is when things, like, really, like, developed for me. But did you read when you were a kid, like elementary, middle school?
I did. I came from a big family of readers, so my mom, she would read to me every night before bed.
Cute.
And that really, like, sparked my love of reading, because we were doing that for as long as I can remember. We would always, whether it's, like, picture books or whatever, when I got a little bit older, we would even do, like, chapter books, I remember, and going through.
Okay, I know, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but I don't remember, sorry, Mom and Dad, if you did read chapter books to me, but I don't ever remember being, like, reading a chapter book with another person. So Did you guys just, like, literally read, like, one chapter at a time, or just however many pages it felt like?
It's because, like, we always did it at night, so, like, before bed, and we didn't get into chapter books really until, I want to say, like, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade. We really stopped after 5th grade because you kind of get older at that point. You're not reading bedtime stories anymore. But it depended on, like, how late it was, if we just do a chapter, or if it was a little bit earlier, we might do, like, 1 or 2 chapters kind of thing. And we just do that every night, like a chapter or 2 every night until we finish the book. I'll never forget, like, our favorite series was called the Santa Paws series, which was about, it was about, like, a dog. I think he was, like, a rescue or, like, a, living on the streets kind of dog, and, like, all the adventures he'd go through around Christmas time, and, like, helping kids, and, like, you know, like, really, like, goodwill type of things.
I'm getting Air Buddies vibes if you've seen that movie.
Kind of. It was, and it was just a really, like, heartwarming, and dogs, we're a big dog family, love dogs. And so, yeah, always around Christmas time, that was, like, the big thing that we would read a lot, I remember.
That's cute.
But, yeah, big reading family. Both my grandmas loved to read, especially my dad's mom. She's a huge reader, and so we talk about books a lot. And then my grandpa, I will never forget one summer over elementary school. It was the summer between 2nd and 3rd grade. He was always, like, giving me little challenges or things like that. And so this one, he said that if I could read 100 books over the summer, he would give me 100 $1 bills, which for me at, like, 7, 8 years old, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be rich.
Me right now, if that was the offer.
I was like, that easy. And so I went through, and they weren't, like, you know, like, picture books, like, easy books. Like, they had to be, like, more, like, real books. I did do it.
Gosh.
100 bucks in the summer. A lot of Junie B. Jones. Loved her. But we did it, and I will never forget that feeling of being at the bank and the lady counting out 100 $1 bills for me.
Wow, so. That's impressive. My Goodreads goal last year, I read 24 books in the year, and I was like, this is amazing. This is crazy. I can't imagine 100 books over the summer.
I was motivated, man. I wanted that money.
Yeah,
and it really did. It was a great motivator for me, like, through life too. That just, like, kept me reading at that point, because it's like Pavlov's dog to me kind of thing.
You're, like, drooling as the pages are flipping. Give it to me.
So yeah, big reader, big reading family, love it.
That's so fun. What is your first book memory as a child? I know you mentioned Junie B. Jones.
Yeah, Junie B. Jones for sure. That was, like, the first real chapter books I got into. I feel like that's a staple for a lot of people.
Yeah, I read Junie B. Jones.
Yeah, you can't not read.
We love Junie.
Oh yeah. Sass Master for sure. But the other one that's more obscure, it was called Clementine by Sarah Pennypacker. And it was a very similar kind of style to Junie B. Jones, but I just related with Clementine so much because she had, like, this restlessness about her, like, getting distracted in class or just, like, not wanting to do things. How my parents didn't figure out I have ADHD at that point, I don't know, but I'm relating to this girl so much, and it was just a very different vibe to Junie B. Jones. Even though they were, like, similar, it was very, very different, and I remember absolutely loving that book and reading it to death when I was little.
I feel like that one sounds similar to me. I need to look that one up, but I might have read that one too, but I can't remember. I will say, I'm so excited to have kids one day and to read to them.
Yes.
And I think part of it goes back to me, like, perform. Like, I can't wait to be each, like, character, do fun voices. Like, they're all gonna have different accents. I think it's gonna be really fun.
Full on performance.
But to get to read them, like, our favorite books, my first childhood memory book would be all the Dr. Seuss ones. So, like, the Green Eggs and Ham. I think I knew that one by heart at one point. It's just such an iconic book. So it's going to be cool to, like, read those. And then also Where the Sidewalk Ends by Shel Silverstein.
So nostalgic.
Whew, talking about performing again. That's what reading was to me in elementary school. But I would sing all those little stories in there.
Some of them were so dramatic and easy to get into to perform. So.
Yes.
Great one. So nostalgic.
Mm-hmm. And then what about, like, your first young adult book?
I remember reading, it's called Cry of the Ice Mark. I don't remember the author, but this was like my first step into fantasy. This was in 5th grade, and it was like young heroine who can take care of herself, and who was like really independent, had the kind of like Ron Stoppable, Kim Possible vibe to it with like the love interest, which was great. And I remember absolutely loving that book so much. And it's tragic because I didn't learn that it was a series until literally this year. And that I could have been reading the full series, but I didn't know it was a series. I thought it was a standalone book. And so now I feel like I need to go back and revisit this book.
You do? How long is the series? How many books are there?
I don't know, but I do know that there's at least 2 or 3 more, I think. So I feel like I need to go back and revisit this.
I do think at some point, maybe even like with the podcast, we should pick out some of our like childhood books or like our first YA books. My first one was called Wings by Apriline Pike, which is really funny because it's about this girl finding out that she is like a fairy. Like, sorry, spoiler alert, but
fairies from the start,
exactly.
Darby.
And now I'm obsessed with Sarah J. Maas, but it's literally, I don't remember a lot of it. I do remember there was a love triangle, I think.
Ooh.
We love a love triangle, but it's like this girl's in high school and she wakes up and there's like a lump on her back and she's like, what is this? But of course she's not telling her parents or anyone. And then she grows wings, and instead of telling people, she like ties them down like behind her back so she can wear shirts and stuff to school. And then I could be butchering some of this because it was in middle school, but I think what happens then is like she like meets an actual fairy and he's like, I know what's wrong, but like I know you have wings.
The beginning of it all.
Yes. So that was probably my first one. And then when I got to high school, I kind of like, I was going through like I dropped reading a little bit, but then this girl.
We all go through that.
Yeah. This girl in my chemistry class, I remember she was reading a book and I was like really intrigued. I thought she was cool. So she was reading this book and I was like, I wonder what that is. And I asked her, and it was the Matched trilogy. I don't know if you ever read it.
I've heard you talk about it before.
Yeah, it was like my first intro into like a dystopian like series. And so that was pretty cool. Again, another love triangle. But
love it.
Yeah.
For me in high school, it was all about Percy Jackson and John Green. Those were my 2 big books that I absolutely loved. I ate up the Percy Jackson, again, with the Greek mythology, obsessed. And then John Green just felt so emotional and deep, and they were
It
were just like, especially at that age, you're like, no one understands.
It had the teen angst.
Yep, that's exactly the word, teen angst to it for sure. That I ate up. I loved it. Plus all of his symbolism, because I was really into that. I know a lot of people hated that.
I probably didn't get any of that when I read them back in the day.
It's like everybody's least favorite part of English class is like, but why were the drapes red? But that was my absolute favorite. I loved finding all the symbolism and hidden meanings. So John Green was it for me.
I also went through a John Green phase. I'm trying to think what my favorite book by him was, but I can't. Now they feel so long ago.
Yeah.
But I definitely liked Looking for Alaska. That one I really liked. And I liked Abundance of Catherines, right? Isn't
yes,
that?
I think so.
But I think now my memory of that one is skewed because of the movie.
Oh, that makes sense.
So now I don't know what was the book and what was the movie since that was so long ago.
I loved Fault in Our Stars, obviously.
I actually never read that one. I only saw the movie.
Really?
Yeah.
I loved the book. The movie was cute too, but the book's always better. But I did love Looking for Alaska. I did a lot of like book reports and stuff on that one because that one I think was my favorite too.
I think the series I was obsessed with in high school was the Selection series with this girl on my cheer team. She recommended it to me, or she was reading it at the time, and I ate it up. Yep. Oh my gosh. It was like, how do you explain it?
It's like The Bachelor meets dystopian
yes.
princesses.
That's literally, I think on the back of the book, it says like The Bachelor meets The Hunger Games is what it says. And like, it's definitely a YA book, but it's just, it was so good. I recently reread it like a couple years ago. And it still hit the same.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this is good. A little more like nostalgic this time.
Sure.
But I was like, oh, this is good.
I did read the first one from your recommendation, and I did really enjoy it. It was really cool. It is a really interesting concept because it's not something that, like, as much as, like, dystopian novels were such, like, the rage at that time, it very much was its own thing. It was very original. Unlike some of them that kind of feel like copy-paste a little bit, it was very much its own thing, and I really appreciated that.
Yeah. It's definitely, like, when I read it the second time, it definitely had a little more of, like, a kid feel to it, especially now that we're reading more adult books. But I don't know. I think that one will always be one of my favorites. Yeah. And, like, who doesn't want to dress up? And,
Absolutely.
Like, I don't know. That was a good one.
So, coming back to the reading journey, I do, again, gotta give Darbi her props because I was always in and out of reading, depending on what was going on at the time. Especially when we got to college, I really got out of it because at that point you're reading textbooks, you're busy studying. I didn't have the time to read the way that I was in middle school and high school. But then I met Darbi, and Darbi and Shelby started this book club, and we read A Court of Thorns and Roses. Actually, the first book was Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which I appreciated, but our second book was A Court of Thorns and Roses, and that just it was a sprint after that. I just took off running and never stopped.
It's so funny because I remember at the time I was so nervous recommending A Court of Thorns and Roses. I was like, they are going to think this is so weird. I'm trying to explain it to them. And for anyone that reads fantasy, you know that trying to explain it to someone, it sounds like you're an idiot.
Yep.
You're like, oh yeah, there's this fairy and a different world, but they're not like little fairies. They're like big, muscular, powerful, magical fairies. And it's like that. It does not come across the way it's supposed to.
Yep.
It just doesn't sound enticing. But it's like, there's war, there's, like,
romance,
drama. But I remember I was so scared recommending that book. But I was similar to you. I, like, read, kind of dropped off in college, at least with fiction-wise. I kept up with self-help books in college, but I really just kind of dropped all, like, fiction. And then this girl who I interned with at Make-A-Wish, she was reading A Court of Thorns and Roses, and she made it sound good. And I remember she was like, but there's a little bit of spice. And I was like, I've never read a book with spice. I don't even know what that means. And yeah, I think once you read A Court of Thorns and Roses,
there's not going back.
You get the bug.
Yep.
Like, her writing is just, like, magical.
Phenomenal.
I think it might be, like a potion, or like you read it and then, like, I'm in a trance. Like, I have to keep going.
Yep. It is. It's one of those that once you start it, you can't stop. It sucks you in until you finish everything, all the books.
Yeah, but I think our breaks are over. We did that. We read A Court of Thorns and Roses, and we've been all gas, no breaks.
Yep. Flying through ever since.
But realistically, like, where are you at now reading-wise, your reading journey?
I have slowed down a bit. So, like, that first year back, I was pedal to the metal. I was cruising through books. I was doing, like, 2 or 3
You were ready for 100 over some.
Yeah, for real.
You were ready to go round two.
Ready for my money. No. But, yeah, I was just nonstop. I mean, they talk about being, like, a bookworm or a book dragon. It's like bookworms, like, just devour books constantly. Versus book dragons, like, hoard books a lot, even though you don't read them. I feel like I 100% am both, where I was, like, constantly just reading and devouring book after book. But then I was collecting books at, like, twice the pace that I was reading them to now I have this huge physical TBR that now that I've slowed down, I'm like, ooh, okay, we gotta take this down before I'm allowed to touch anything Barnes and Noble.
Okay, see, I'm different in that I have maybe 2 physical books right now that I haven't read. Like, if I buy a book, I am reading it then. Like, I do not have physical TBRs. Like, if I want to read a book, I'm gonna get it, or it's gonna stay in my, like, Goodreads want to read.
I saw this I don't know who said it. I think it was, like, I saw it on TikTok or something. It was a quote by somebody talking about how they treat books like fine wine, and when you're collecting them, it's just like sitting in the cellar. It's not the right time yet. You got to let it age properly before you touch it. And I feel like that's very much how I treat books.
I love that analogy. Book people are so smart.
I know. I cannot take credit. That is not me. Don't come at me. That was not whoever created that saying or that quote. But
all credit goes to you.
All credit goes to them. Not an original, fun. But I do love it. And it makes me feel a little bit better about my endless TBR.
Yeah. I get you. I think I did not go as hard as you, but I definitely was like really ramping up after we started book club. I was going so hard, so fast. Like I just wanted to keep going. And now I think I'm pretty like consistent. Like I try to read 2 books a month is kind of like my goal. So it's like normally our book club book and then one like extracurricular book. Like that's just on my TBR.
I feel like it's a totally doable goal.
Yeah.
And like something easy that I'm trying to do too. It was hard after the holidays and things got crazy and Darby got married. So we were going through all the wedding planning and fun stuff like that. But
and now Mikayla's engaged, so she's up next.
Yep. But we're taking our time on that one. But also,
as you should, enjoy the time.
It's also why it's slowing down a little bit. So it's not going to be as crazy as it was before for me. But definitely, I think the 2 books a month is totally doable and an easy goal to keep for the both of us.
Yeah. Also, I was thinking about it. I think the term book hangover is so real too that sometimes when you've read such a good book, like you like want to read another book, but at the same time it's like, it's not going to be as good. So then it's like
Kingdom of Ash.
Yeah. Ooh, I'm going to cry.
We're not going to talk about it. That's trauma.
But I think that happens too. It's weird now that like, I feel like we're so much more into books now than when we first became friends. And it's funny, I was talking to Justin, my husband, shout out hubby. We were talking about like how we've changed and our relationship has changed. And one of the first things he said was like, well, you definitely read a lot more than when we first started going out. But I don't know. I just think you kind of just get into your own like zone and routine of reading. And I feel like now we've hit like a routine. Like before we were trying to figure out like, I want everything. I want to read it now. And now we're like, I do want to read everything, but that's impossible. So we're going to take it as it comes.
Yep. Fantastic way to put it. Yeah.
Thanks.
Josh really appreciates my book obsession because same thing. Like I was not reading as much when we first started dating, but now it gives him time to go out and play golf because he knows it's like, hey, did you see like, have you started the latest book or for book club, Like, you should probably get on that. And it's like, oh, by the way, I'm also leaving for tea time. I'll see you later.
That's Justin, but with video games. So he loves that he gets to hang out with his friends and play video games, and I go read with the dog. But it's funny, I've tried to read while he plays video games. I can't. He's so loud that it's just not doable. Like, you get in a zone during some scenes of books, and then when they're yelling, I'm like, all right, I need a different setting. I cannot.
I will say, Josh is very talented. He has a sixth sense for knowing when those scenes come up, and that is exactly when he chooses that we're going to have, like, a really great conversation about something. Asking me random questions. We can be sitting on the couch for a couple hours not talking, and I'm reading the book. As soon as I get to a spicy part, I'm not even kidding, like, a few words in, and he immediately is like, now is the greatest time for me to ask, what are we doing about dinner? Or, like, oh, we should go see this next movie or what that's coming out. Or
I hope he hears this right now. He's in another room right now, and I really hope Josh is hearing.
He knows. I tell him, and he thinks it's funny. He does nothing to change it, but it's fine.
It is funny, too, like, when you're reading and you're, like, trying to finish a chapter, and they ask you a question, and it's, like, 2 more pages. Like, hold on, I can't focus. And then they ask you another question. I'm like, 1 more page. Hold on. Yep. Like, let me just get to a stopping point.
Oh, no, Josh knows. Like, if he sees that I'm down at the end, he won't bother me.
Yeah.
Because otherwise he'll have to deal with the consequences of that, and he doesn't want to deal with that. So.
That's so good. That's so good. But I'm really excited about this and about our podcast. Yeah. I think it's going to be so much fun. And like we said, we're kind of in like a nice routine. So we're excited to just talk about books with more people. We really want to hear from you guys, and hopefully you like the books that we're reading. But if not, let us know and give us recommendations for books that you think are way better than the books that we're reading.
Or even if you just have recommendations for us, our TBRs are endless. So, what's one more, two more books to add to it anyway.
Exactly. I know we both love Sarah J. Maas, but we both are late to the Fourth Wing craze. Mm-hmm. So we both... Do you have the book already?
No, but it is on my list.
That's on mine too. I just actually bought both of them. I think it's Iron Flame is the second one. Mm-hmm. So, because I figured we were going to read those eventually. But I've heard such good things about them that I think that'll be my next fantasy book after Crescent City.
Mm-hmm. All over Book Talk. Yeah, it's definitely on my list. Mm-hmm. After I finish the Crescent City, House of Sky and Breath is the next one. For me, at least. I think I'm going to take a little bit of a fantasy break, do a little palette cleanse. You need a fantasy break. And I call them palette cleanses because otherwise if you go from one fantasy to the next, they start to blend and you compare them too much it just doesn't work for me to enjoy.
It's the worst when they use the same names for characters and you're like, oh no. Or the same place names. That has really thrown me. I'm like, what world am I in? Yeah. I don't know. Sometimes I've gotten something is too similar.
Or the magic systems are really, really similar, but then there's one nuanced difference that you forget about between the two of them. Yeah. I need, especially after a Sarah J. Maas type of fantasy book, I need a break before I go in to anything else. So I don't know what that next one will be, but
my breaks are usually a romance book because compared to the thick fantasy books, it's such a quick read.
Yep.
I think the newest Sarah J. Maas book is 102 chapters, over 800 pages, and then I get a romance book and it's half that or even less than that.
A quarter of it.
Yeah. I'm whoa, this will be so quick. Yeah. And that's why it looks like I'm reading it so fast because in comparison, it's so little.
It's true. Yeah. All depends on the timing you have too, which, we're adults, which sucks, and being in an adult world sucks now because all you want to do is sit on the couch and be lazy and read books all day.
Yeah, so if you all could listen and share this so that we can make this our full-time gig and not have to work, that would be great.
Love you forever. We are so lazy. We are not meant for corporate world.
No. But, so speaking of book club and books, like we said, we are reading The Worst Best Man right now by Lucy Score. So on our next podcast, that's going to be the book that we're talking about. So if you want to read it beforehand so you can kind of understand sort of references we're talking to, we're really going to try and when we talk about books, if we're going to talk about spoilers or get into the nitty-gritty, we're going to try and break it up so that if you still want to listen to the podcast but haven't read the book, we are hoping to give you time slots where you can skip ahead. If we want to talk about the actual plot and stuff, we'll say, okay, skip to minute 23 or something, and then you can listen to the podcast but not necessarily hear all the specifics about the book and the spoilers.
Right. And so if the episode comes out before you finish the book because you're joining us for book club, you can still listen to everything that's going on. And then later when you finish the book, you know exactly where to go for all of our thoughts on it.
Yeah.
So no spoilers here. We hate spoilers coming across them. Bookstagram is the worst about it.
It is.
So you will not find them here.
It's crazy. I'm not going to say the spoiler for people who haven't read it, but one of my coworkers, I got her to read A Court of Thorns and Roses, and she wanted to look up the characters.
Oh, no.
But she looked up one of the main characters while she was reading the first book.
Oh, no.
But then it shows a lot of characters from future books, and it ruined it for her.
That is one you cannot. If anybody has yet to read A Court of Thorns and Roses and you're listening to this, do not look up anything while reading that series. It will ruin it for you.
Literally, email who you want to see. We will find the character and we will send you a fan art of just that character. But if you look up one, you're going to get all of them.
Yep.
Yeah. Also, we're going to talk about Sarah J. Maas a lot. So speaking of Court of Thorns and Roses again, do you remember our friend Samantha? Poor girl. She read, I think, the first one, and then before starting the second one, she started reading the last one,
yes!
And that ruined it for her too.
Entirely.
That broke my heart.
Yeah.
I was the fact that you're not going to get to see that play out naturally, but you just had to
Because I don't know how much that second book would hit knowing the spoilers for it.
I don't know.
It's heart-wrenching knowing.
Yeah. Like, oh my gosh.
You poor souls who have had that spoiled for you. I feel for you. I'm here for you. You're in my thoughts and prayers.
Yeah. We love Bookstagram, Book Talk, and all the memes, but at the same time, please keep it away. Yep. Even publishing places, like, isn't Bloomsbury, they're just out here posting things.
That was wild for the new Crescent City book.
Which I do get it to an extent, because I was reading some of the comments on one of them, and some people are like, well, yeah, we read the other one when it first came out. We've been waiting 2 years. We want these little, like, snippets. So I get it. Like, I can't be mad. I just now know, like, I am not going to look on those sites or look at photos or...
But it's really hard when it's like, you can't blame the publishing company for putting some of that stuff out or for people being excited, but it's really hard when you don't go looking for things like that, but you find them anyway. Because, like, obviously I know that the new Sarah J. Maas book is coming out, so I'm not going to look on all of these different places that I normally am for, you know, Bookstagram, Book Talk, whatever. But they still find you anyway, and that's the frustrating part of it. There's nothing you can do about it. It's just the way of the world at this point. Nobody's fault, but, it's frustrating.
They do. You know what I'm thinking about as we're, like, talking about, like, Sarah J. Maas and kind of, like, talking around spoilers? Like, being in the book community, it's like you have to talk in coded messages. Yes. Like, when you're talking about a book or a sequel or literally anything, you don't want to give anything away, because it, like, reading gives you such a, like, I don't know.
It's like a high.
It is. And so, like, you can't take that away from someone.
Nope.
So you're just like, I feel like we kind of sound crazy talking right now. Like, I hope the listeners can, like, follow along with us, like, what we're getting at, because, you know, we don't want to spoil things.
It's like that conversation between Rachel and Joey, I think, on Friends, where it's like, I know what you know. Or, like,
I can't tell you until you tell me. Right, yeah, I know.
Exactly what I'm talking about.
Do you know something? Maybe. Do you know something?
Maybe. What do you know? Well, what do you know? It's exactly what it's like.
It is. I love it, though. It's so fun, like, meeting a random person who's read the same book as you, like, that's cool. And when you're both like, oh my gosh, I love that so much, like, oh, it's so cool.
I'm somebody, too, that loves to hear, like, differing opinions from mine, too. So as much as I love and adore Sarah J. Maas, I do enjoy reading, like, the 1-star reviews or things for her books, because it is interesting to see how other people interpret things. And sometimes they bring up good points that you don't think about because you're, like, so swept up in the moment of it all, too. It's just interesting seeing, like, how somebody can have such a differing opinion from you on, like, something so similar. Like, the same thing.
It is. Yeah. I think that's kind of why we work, because I think we do have a lot of differing opinions on books, on characters.
Lots of characters.
Yeah.
But it works. It's
does.
Fun.
It's so good.
It makes for interesting conversation. Hence the podcast.
Yeah. That's what's nice about, like, books, too, is it's, like, your own world. Like, these are my friends. Like... And then you get to share it with other people, but if they have differing opinions, it's, like, okay, because it's like, well, they weren't in my head when I read it. Yeah. Like, these are my feelings. Like, I don't know.
Well, or it's even better if, like, they have a different pronunciation than you on a certain character, because then you're like, well, it's not even my character anyway. So.
Exactly. I'm trying to, when I learn the new pronunciation for certain characters, like, I'll try, but for some of them, like, it's just gonna stay.
If I learn it early on enough in the book, then I can swap it. But if I'm already, like, a third, halfway through, it's my pronunciation now. I don't care what the correct way to say it is. This is the way it's gonna be for me. So there's no going back at that point.
It's so fun hearing the authors, like, when they say it, like, when they say names that everyone else is pronouncing differently, but they wrote it. So even if that, like, that's not proper English, like, that literally is her character. Yeah. Like, this is who she wants it to be, this is how she wants it spelled, and this is how she wants it to be said. So that's right, you know? Like,
oh no.
But it's just, like, I don't know. Authors are so powerful. This is, I mean, I've had a lot of fun. I feel like this is really good. I feel like we've talked a lot on this podcast and just this first episode. And I think it's going to be really good and really fruitful because I could talk for hours and hours still.
Absolutely. I feel like we do.
And it's because I'm trying to hold back on certain topics too, because I know like we could do a whole episode just on Goodreads, like, which we should one day, but like, I don't know.
Let us know if you have any good topics you want us to talk about too.
Or like books you want us to read and discuss. Literally anything. We're ready to talk about anything and everything.
Because we clearly love to talk.
Yeah, I can't shut up.
Hey, but we have fun doing it.
We do. Well, I feel like we've covered a lot for this first episode.
So, a little taste of what will come. We'll get further deep dives into a lot of these topics later.
And definitely, really, this is our first episode, both of our first times doing a podcast. Let us know what you think. Does this work? Can you follow us at all? Or do we just sound like we're jumping from like point A to point Q?
Do we talk too fast?
Oh, yes. Let me know.
Give us the feedback. We'll fix it up. We want this podcast to be great.
Yeah.
So.
And we really want to make more book friends. But like we said, I think we mentioned this already. Our book club next month, The Worst Best Man by Lucy Score. Go ahead, get it, read it, or if not, and you don't care about spoilers and you just want to hear our voices, then just tune in next episode.
We always have plenty of opinions to share on books.
Yeah.
So,
but that's what we'll be talking about in our next episode. But to wrap up this one, we're going to be ending each episode with a recurring segment we like to call Borrows and Returns. So similar to borrowing and returning a book at the library, this is where we're going to get to talk about what books we're currently reading or are next up on our TBR list, and which books we've just recently finished and want to share our thoughts on. So, Mikayla, what books are on your borrows and returns list?
So my borrows right now, obviously, Worst Best Man, still reading up on our book club book. And then House of Sky and Breath. I did just finish the first Crescent City book. I forget, the House of Earth and Blood, I think it is.
Something like that.
It's the first one. Enjoyed it, loved it, ready for the second one, but not till I finish book club book first, because that other one is a commitment, like we talked about, between the difference of romance and fantasy. My returns, recently I read a really popular book talk book called A Little Life by Hanya, I'm gonna really butcher this name, Yangira?
Sounds good to me.
Gonna go with it. I had seen this for years, like a year, over TikTok of people talking about just like how heart-wrenching it is, but how like beautifully written the story of it all. By like reading the back of it, I got kind of very like a Dead Poet Society vibe from it.
Is this the one that you were like, I'm reading it, but I know I'm gonna cry?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Like I went in fully prepared. Like I was in an emotional state, and I was like, I'm ready for this book now. I want this book. And I read it, and I will say it was beautifully written to a point, and it was really it was different, and it was really nice for like the first third of it. But then it just gets so depressing, and it is one of those books that it's not like a lot of like depressing things have at least like some glimmer of hope in the end.
I was just gonna ask, did it have some like
no.
Okay.
It was just full on dark despair, and then there is no hope in the end, and everyone dies, and who cares about life, and everything's depressing.
I don't know if I would like that.
I don't get me wrong, like I'm live for like a good like heart-wrenching story, but at least with like a little bit of like, it doesn't even have to end on like a happy note, but just like the fact that there is hope for something happy at the end. There was not that, and it just the story dragged on for a really long time. And so when you're reading something that depressing for such a long time, I'm like, it wasn't for me, and I'm really sad about it because I was really looking forward to it. But if you're into really deep depressing books, it is written beautifully, so maybe check it out. But it wasn't my cup of tea.
I mean, sometimes you are in the mood to cry, so yeah,
and it will do that. So
that's good.
What about you, Darby? What are your borrows and returns?
So borrows, I am ahead of Mikayla with Sarah J. Maas book. So I'm reading her most recent book, the third Crescent City book, House of Flame and Shadow. So I'm not really going to say anything about that because Mikayla has some catching up to do. And I literally just started it last night. So, but I'm intrigued for how she's going to develop. You never know what she's going to do. So
last 100 pages of those books, just all
that's a roller coaster. So I'm really excited about that one. But that's going to take me a while. So this might be one of my borrows for a little bit. Mm-hmm. But who knows? But I'm also reading How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. So it's a self-help book. I think it's a really famous one.
It is a really well-known one.
So it's been okay so far. I'm doing it. I'm really doing it like a little bit at a time. But it's very interesting. All the different things that he says about people. And a lot of it is true. A lot of what he's said so far is just kind of how people are very self-centered and they only want to talk about themselves. They never want criticism, which like that's all true.
Yep, sounds about right.
So it makes sense when you want to, influence people and win friends to not.
Helps be aware of it.
Yeah. So to give them like true praise and maybe watch your criticism around them if you're trying to influence them into helping you with something.
I do love the psychology of people.
It is cool. And I'm trying to let it sit a little bit and trying to like reflect on it. So as I do things or even just like my own motivations, I'm like trying to reference the book. And he compares a lot of like what we should do to acting like dogs and babies, which is funny. So like a dog's almost sole purpose is to like love its owner. Mm-hmm. And they every day, like one of the happiest parts of their day is when their owner comes home and they're so excited to greet them. And so he was saying we should be so excited to greet people and to like pure love, really love each other. And I thought that was really cool.
That is cool.
Yeah. So, I don't know. Anyway, those
interesting take.
Yeah, those are my borrows right now. And then my returns, I have finished book club book already. So, I finished The Worst Best Man by Lucy Score. And then I finished Everybody Always by Bob Goff. And that one was a really good one, too. Bob Goff is a Christian author. And his stories are really nice. He's lived a really cool life. So, that's one of the reasons why I really liked it. He reminds me like a grandpa, and it's like, aw, like, tell me more stories. And
I've heard you talk about him, so that one's on my TBR as well.
It's really sweet, and it's not, sometimes things can, like, get really heavy, and, like, some self-help books or faith-based books can feel really heavy and really, like, hard, but he keeps it very light and very happy, but still can get, like, an emotional point across, and be really passionate in his writing. Yeah. So those are my returns.
Love it.
Yeah.
What a way to end this thing.
I can't believe it. Those were our borrows and returns. And
first ones ever. Here we are. Lazy Girl Library.
Yay. Well, we really hope that you liked this episode. This is it. This is the end of episode 1.
Can't believe it. We did it. Long time coming.
We did it.
We're here.
Now, hopefully, we don't have technical difficulties saving this, and it all goes smoothly.
Please pray for us.
Yeah. But thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.
Well, dear listeners, we find ourselves at the end of another episode. And remember, the Lazy Girl Library is not just a podcast, it's a community. We absolutely love hearing from fellow book lovers, so don't forget to share your thoughts and your favorite reads with us on our social media. You can find us on Instagram at Lazy Girl Library. Make sure to check out our website, lazygirllibrary.com, your one-stop shop for all things Lazy Girl. Before we go, we want to take a moment to thank all of our wonderful listeners. Whether you're listening from your cozy bed, on your way to work, or anywhere in between, thank you for making us a part of your day and for being a part of our Lazy Girl family. So keep those pages turning, keep those imaginations flourishing, and remember, the best stories are yet to be discovered. Until next time, stay lazy and happy reading.